How's it going, y'all? Thanks for tuning in. This one's going to be a little lengthy, so just plan accordingly, please. It's going to go over how I prepped for my first men's pro Hyrox out in Dallas this past 2024 November. This first clip is just an idea to give you an idea of what it's like running the race. Everyone's running together, all age groups and everything. Just depends on what heat you're in. So it's very organized. And the reason I want to go over this is, one, because I think it might be useful for someone somewhere down the line, but I'm also a bodybuilder. So I've been competing naturally as a bodybuilder for 16 years, and I used the Hyrox in March. I did it with a buddy of mine in the men's doubles. I used that as kind of the kickoff for my competitive bodybuilding season. It's a little bit more fun to train for a fitness race like the Hyrox rather than just the same old just dieting and not so fun. It's pretty monotonous to get ready for a prep. So I use this to kick it off and get my cardio up to snuff because I come from a non-running background. I ran absolutely 0 miles leading up to this, and I never have been a runner. I've always ended up injuring myself in one way or another, knees, ankles, shin splints, you name it, and it really turned me off from the sport. So this clip that you're seeing was in March, so that was when we ran it as a doubles. So you split all of the events. There's 8 events with 8 laps, each lap a kilometer. And with a partner, you can split up the event however you want. You can split it half and half or whatever makes it work for your team. So that was really fun. Not nearly as taxing as this pro division is, but very good to kind of get your feet wet if you're not sure it may be for you or you might not be ready for it. Splitting the workload definitely helps. So I competed in bodybuilding shortly there. Well, I shouldn't say shortly thereafter. It was in August. So from March was the doubles. I competed again, or in August, and won my pro card with the NFF. It's just a regional federation. And then I had another one scheduled for the beginning of November. So if you saw the picture in the beginning, this Hyrox was November 23rd. My second bodybuilding competition was the 3rd. So I had 20 days to prepare from in between them. And if you know anything about bodybuilding, you're not really doing any kind of hard training other than just lifting hard to retain the muscle that you have worked hard to build. So I wasn't running and I wasn't doing any kind of interval training that you need for Hyrox. So I had 20 days to prepare in between. And that's what I'm going to cover in a couple of minutes here. How I did that and what I did and, if I do it again, etc. But there is stage photos from the Monster Mash out in Boston. So I did that through the WNBF, ended up getting 3rd in that competition. And again, talk about that in a bit if you are interested in it. However, just wrapping up this ski erg, which is the event that I'm doing. It's it's really just a matter of trying to get your technique down. My technique was not very good. I didn't have a machine to practice. That was nearby at least. So that's just managing your heart rate, which this whole race is really about managing your heart rate. That's that coupled with making sure that you have an adequate aerobic base to start off with. Now, all that being said, you can go out and do this and walk it if you want, right? No one says you have to run the event and anything, really. There's really no rules. Just go out and participate. However, I'm a competitive individual, as I would imagine if you're watching this channel or consuming this content, I'd probably guess you are too. And so this is that's kind of who I'm targeting this content for, is someone who does want to try and do well in the event, maybe not be a world record holder or anything like that, but you want to have a good time and put your best foot forward. I mean, that's to me what competing is about, is not necessarily how you stack up against the other people, which, yeah, you want to be first, I would imagine, or you wouldn't compete to begin with. However, let's be real, most people are not elite athletes, right? Or else we'd be, getting paid for it, and playing probably a different sport that pays better or something like that. But I digress. The point is, if you want to have a good time and run the whole thing, you should be able to run, at least in my opinion, somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half in one stretch. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to do it super quick. I would say that probably under a 10-minute mile would be a good target to shoot for that length of time. And the reason I say between an hour to an hour and a half is because that's where most competitors finish the event. Okay, so if you're not used to being on your feet and being active for that time frame, then doing this event will be more challenging because it does take, quite some time. And even at the top world championship elite levels, no one's doing this in less than 55 or 54 minutes. So that's the top of the top. Okay, so that's to give you some kind of time frame reference. Techniques involved in it outside of just running and making sure that your biomechanics are good and that your form is good and all of those things for running, you want to practice the events as much as possible because they're going to be somewhat more challenging on the race day. Like in this one, this sled push, that carpet that I'm pushing on is very, very traction-y, or there's a lot of friction to it, right? It's coarse, so it's not smooth. If you're practicing at home, I would recommend adding more weight to get used to pushing harder to get it over that carpet. The other thing is, you notice, or maybe not, is I'm stopping halfway through, okay? And that's, again, heart rate management. I could push the whole way through, but my heart rate is going to spike so high that I'm not going to be able to recover fast enough. So it's better, in my opinion, and from other people doing this, is to not let your heart rate get elevated so much and then let it come back down and then push again. So that's a technique to practice, before the race. Now, this next event is the sled pull. This one kicked my butt. And part of it was technique, and then the other part was just lack of preparation, in my opinion. I could have prepared better for it. The men's doubles, it was about 130 pounds lighter than this weight. Okay, so, that extra 130 does make a difference. And then also, depending on if you're a big person or not, right? If you have more body weight to you, you're going to have a little bit more leverage. I'm not particularly very big, about 155, 160 pounds around here, is within that range. So to give you some idea. But if you notice, my feet are not going all the way to the edge of the box that I'm in. Okay, so I should have been pulling all the way to the end, but I was cutting myself short, and that was not very efficient. So that is something I would definitely redo if I could and practice better. The other one is just making sure that the rope is tight the whole time. It's a very stretchy rope. Okay, so you want to make sure that every time you pull, you're pulling with your arms and keeping the rope taut so that you don't have to re-tension it and pull again. Okay, hopefully that made sense. But point is, rope management, and then also just making sure that you are using the entire space that's allotted for you so you don't lose momentum when you're doing this event. So that's my tips for this. And then these are probably what challenge people the most, I would say, is that sled push and the sled pull, which it's structured pretty nice because once you get past these, it's kind of just a matter of going back to really managing that heart rate and making sure, I thought this was going to pop up bigger. This is just the rankings. All right. So I got smack middle of my age range and smack middle of the entire men's division for the pro division. So it was ranked 27 out of 57 and I believe 107 out of 207. So times weren't terrible. They weren't great either. I know I could do better eventually, which kind of leads me into the next thing that I was going to talk about is, would I attempt to do a bodybuilding and Hyrox competition concurrently again? No, I would not. Bodybuilding has been my passion for 16 years at this point, so I do think that I got a little bit distracted towards my competition date with worrying about how I was going to prepare for the Hyrox and not just focusing on bodybuilding. And I guess that was the challenge, right? That was the experiment I was running. So looking back on it, it was fun, great experience, taught me a lot. However, I wouldn't do it again. So for 2025, I'm going to be just competing in bodybuilding. I'm not going to be doing Hyrox again, but I am still trying to maintain my running fitness by running a couple of times a week and not completely losing it, because that's the thing with running is, as long as you can get a couple of runs in, you won't lose it completely. But just like lifting, right? Use it or lose it. So I'd rather keep in a couple of miles a week and just maintain, right? It's hopefully not decrease or diet or, lose my fitness too much. But outside of that, not doing any kind of interval training with weights other than doing the bike. Okay, so that's pretty much all I'm doing. Everything else that I'm training right now is for hypertrophy purposes. The way I trained leading up to this Hyrox was simply doing intervals. Okay, so obviously I wanted to run, so I was doing quite a bit of running, and most of it not very, very challenging, just really kind of a moderate pace for long distances, probably between somewhere around 5 miles, 4 to 6 miles on average, to get used to it. And then I would have one day of some intervals where I would do some maybe a couple of minutes running at a faster pace and then slowing down and running faster again. So that was my running training. And then as far as like the events, I just would do exactly what the events were. If it was like burpee broad jumps, like this right here, I would practice burpee broad jumps. If it was wall balls, I would do thrusters or wall balls. I would kind of alternate the two. Sled push and pull, again, same thing. The ski erg I didn't have access to, and with the row, I was doing rowing as well at the gym. Something I want to mention about burpee broad jumps, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can either do a jump in, jump out, and then jump forward. Or you can do what I'm doing here, I'm the person in the gray hat, where I'm stepping in and stepping out and then jumping. So you see I step back and then I come up and I step forward and then I jump, right? Some people can do the entire thing jumping, right? My fitness level was not there to do that for the entire event, okay? You can see I'm already lagging right here. I'm getting tired. And they are also sticklers about where your hands land in front of your feet. They need to be directly in front of your feet, so you can't like lean forward and get an extra, I guess, couple of inches of space to help you out. So they were correcting me on that. But that's, I mean, the training isn't too complicated. I think the main thing that people have to focus on for this is having an aerobic base to build off of. From a non-runner, it took me from November of 2023, not running anything, all the way to my first competition in March. That took most of that training time was focused on running. It wasn't up until like the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks that I really started doing actual interval training. And that's because I had no base, right? I could barely run a 10-minute mile. I don't even think I could run a 10-minute mile when I first started. So now my mile times average like somewhere in the 8:30s, something like that. And if I was really pushing it, maybe a little bit closer to this, high 7 mark for multiple miles. But that gives you an idea of fitness level, right? When I did long runs, I would probably average about 9 minutes and 30 seconds for a 7, 8, 9 miler. Okay. Again, just to give you some reference and some time frames. Some things about the race, like you can see in this angle, I'm doing the row, which is the 5th event, and then you can see directly across from me is the farmer's carry, which is the 6th event, but they're not always laid out in numerical order. So sometimes you might have some on one side of the venue and some on the other. So make sure and map that out when you're getting ready for it before you go on your heat. And then race nutrition, maybe if you want to bring like a gel pack, a little bit of sugar, like maybe some candy or something like that, but they do offer some Powerade, which obviously has sugar in it. So you can just get that if you want to. Totally up to you. I didn't do any kind of like race nutrition, but some people do. As far as the rowing goes, it's 1,000 meters. Again, heart rate management, I probably could have gone faster on it, but I was just going at a steady pace. Farmer's carry, matter of grip strength. They do offer chalk. I would say don't run. Okay, walk briskly, because if you start to run, the weights are going to swing and your shoulders are going to get more tired than if you just walked quickly. You're going to expend more energy. It's just a matter of being able to hold on to that weight for, I think it's 200 meters. So it's, what you saw me do right there. Not super hard. This one, the lunges, I practice holding the weights in my hands, which is a mistake because when you have the sandbag on your back, it does limits the breath that you can take because it's weighed down on your back. So if I would have practiced it, I probably would have done a little bit better. But just in general, your legs are getting kind of cooked at this point. It's just what it is, right? That's part of the race. The other thing is, I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but my knees are a little bit banged up, and I would suggest just getting over it, because if you're really trying to do like a proper lunge, and what I mean by proper is, like you would if you were going after hypertrophy versus just speed, you're going to gas yourself out more. If you don't try and slow down, which is the eccentric portion, right? The descent of the lift. If you don't slow it down, you're going to save a little bit of energy, and that just means that you're just going to bang your knee a little bit. So it's up to you. If you don't want to do that, by all means, you don't have to, but that's just a little bit of a tip that I would give you if you do want to be a little bit faster. Wall balls. So again, like I said, I would alternate actually doing wall balls and then thrusters. It's about a 20-pound ball, so I would hold 15 or 20-pound dumbbells in each arm and press them up as a dumbbell thruster, or just use the ball that was available. Great thing about this is that you don't have to keep count, because the Hyrox is nice enough to offer someone to count for you. So this really nice lady that's behind me was just keeping count and making sure that I was going to depth. So that's something else you do want to watch out for, is if you don't go to depth and squat all the way down, they're gonna dock you and count you a no rep, or they're gonna put some kind of a bucket underneath you in order to make sure that you're hitting depth. So something to keep in mind when you're doing these. Practice the full depth and don't cheat, because it's going to come out when you're actually doing the event. The way I broke these down were in sets of 10. So I would just do 10, rest, 10 again. It's the last event, so you really don't have to hold back anything if you don't want to. At this point, I really was gassed, and I just kind of wanted to finish, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to stick with my 10 and just finish off. I think I did 15 for my first one, and then I did 15 for my last one, but every set in between I was doing 10. It's something of bragging rights if you're able to do 100 wall balls unbroken. that would be awesome. Hopefully it's a goal that I can accomplish at some point. But for now, I'll stick to my sets of 10 to 15. So recapping everything, if you're going to do this, I would certainly allot enough time for you to get into running shape. Again, being able to be on your feet for an hour to an hour and a half, running at a decent pace, somewhere at least under 10-minute miles in that time frame. Doing some interval training where you're compromised, meaning your legs are compromised. So you're running and then doing some resistance training and then running and doing some resistance training, because that's what this is about. You can also increase your threshold by doing some lactate threshold training if you need to. That to me is a little bit more advanced. If you're at that point, right, then you're probably no longer a beginner, because just getting ready for the race is something different than actually getting better at the race. Okay, my fitness level before and after, this really does increase all aspects of fitness, in my opinion. If I wasn't a bodybuilder, this is how I would train. I would certainly be training this way. It just so happens that I love bodybuilding, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So at least for the next couple of years, I won't be competing very hard in the Hyrox. If I do any more, it might be in a teams event, or it might be I might do another men's pro, but we'll see. It's something where you have to. Yeah, actually, let me rephrase that. You don't have to do anything, but I would want to dedicate a training block. So at least 8 to 12 weeks where I was only practicing running and Hyrox events to get better at it. And that means that I would have to cut into hypertrophy time, which means not necessarily, not making any gains, which as a bodybuilder, that's not probably the best. So, yeah, which brings me to 2025 of focusing on strictly bodybuilding. So that's what I'll be doing. If you have any questions, and I appreciate you making it all the way to the end of this video, I do know is a long one, let me know. I'm more than happy to give you my 2 cents on anything you're curious about, whether it's Hyrox training, bodybuilding training, fitness, diet in general. I did self-coach this year, but I will be using a coach for 2025. I think that it's going to give me a little bit of a breather, so I don't have to worry as much when I'm getting ready for these preps in the future. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Thanks.